Double Take is in its third year, has now welcomed over 100 stories from the HGSE community, with this fall semester being our most popular session yet, consisting of a week of HGSE community members sharing a part of themselves in a video studio, being coached and heard with 9 stories chosen by a committee to perform today. This is unequivocally my favorite hour of the semester. And I have one request for you all. To get in the space my college professor would employ this. Simplify, simplify, simplify. If Thoreau really meant it, he would have just said it once. In this world, it is Herculean to make things simple for a brief amount of time. Typically, this is when someone like me stands in front of you all and asks you to shut off, shut down, put away, close devices and distractions. And while I do want you to do all of that, I would really prefer you all to power on whatever side of you that allows one to feel more deeply, connect more strongly, and embrace not just what is said, but how it is said, and where a good story can meet you in the arc of your journey in life or just in sifting out the detritus of your day to day. But for now, to the neuroscience, the romantics, the seekers listening, I say bend your heads, your hearts, and your souls towards a pre-tweet, pre-twerk, oldest form of teaching and learning, apropos to this eponymous week that we celebrate. These are 9 stories, and yet as you will hear, they are so much more.
Hey y'all. My name is Natasha Daniella Rivera, and 3 weeks ago, I planned my first ever protest. I planned it as an act of love, of collaboration and coalition, as an act of hope and solidarity. But this story isn't about the protest. It isn't about the person that we were protesting. This story is about knowing your history, how you learn it, why you learn it, and how knowing your history might make you plan your first ever protest. When I was a senior in high school, I won a spot to a trip called Sojourn to the Past. Sojourn still exists today. It was a deep dive, practically live on a bus for 10 days, trip through the South to interact with the living history, the sites, the monuments of the civil rights movement. A history that up until then had just been relegated to a couple of bullet points in my AP US history textbook. A history that someone had decided was easy and worth glossing over quickly in favor of other histories. This trip was my answer to that. As we got started, the group leader warned us that what we were going to be experiencing was going to be very visceral, that it was going to be emotional, and that there would be a breakthrough moment where we would cry, and that would be just opening the floodgates. And I was ready. I'm already an incredibly emotional person, so I was like, yes, all right, we got this, let's do it. And yet, more than halfway through the trip, I hadn't cried yet. We had been doing these amazing projects. We had been speaking with amazing people, met with the family of James Chaney. We met Fred Shuttlesworth, got to meet the family of Medgar Evers. Minnie Jean Brown hung out with us every day. It was amazing. And yet, I still hadn't had that moment. I hadn't felt that deeper connection. I hadn't cried. And it was shameful. It made me feel like there was something wrong with me. That maybe I wasn't processing this like I should have been, that maybe I didn't appreciate this as much as I should have. And then we went to the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. Built in 1873 as the first black church in Birmingham and rebuilt in 1964 after the Ku Klux Klan bombed the basement, and 4 little girls, Addie Mae Collins, Cynthia Wellesley, Carol Robertson, and Carol Denise McNair, were in the basement getting ready for their Sunday service, and they died. They were murdered. It's hard for me to describe what it felt like walking up those church steps, walking down the aisles. I remember seeing a lot of red. And as our tour guide led us downstairs into the basement where we were supposed to have a buffet lunch, I imagined those 4 little girls walking down a similar set of stairs, laughing, dancing, playing, giggling, and doing what little girls do. And then I imagined the bomb going off. And that's when it happened. That's when I ran back up the other direction and sat in the pews and just lost it. Because I was so overwhelmed by the history that I didn't know their names up until that moment, that someone had decided that their names weren't worth knowing. And I was overwhelmed by the gratitude I had for the church that rebuilt with its community, that rebuilt in solidarity and opened its doors to people like me who were in search of history. I was so grateful. I carry that story with me every day. It made me want to question, what stories do I want to be a part of? What narratives do I want to tell? What narratives do I want to unlearn because I have to unlearn them? I carried that with me when I planned the protest because, again, it was an act of love, an act of hope, an act of solidarity, an act of new family. And yet, in the praise after the protest, people have been singularly focused on the beauty and the democracy of our use of silence. Silent. It was silent. Silence is only one tactic. Silence isn't always right. So much of our history has been silenced. So much violence, so many stories, so many injustices have been silenced. So I invite you, sitting here with me, to think about your narratives, your histories, the histories that stayed with you and shaped you to be who you are, and think about the silence in between them. Think about what you don't know and why you don't know it. And I invite you to sit with me in silence, in the privilege that is in silence. Is that right? Yeah. This way? Yes, thank you. Got it. To sit in silence that was a privilege, like the way I did, during the protest, holding this sign in front of a woman who doesn't know her history, saying there will always be more to the story.